The Skittles packs. The creepiest camping trip I ever had was with my best friend. We went to this semi-remote campsite, technically drivable, but only if you had a 4x4. The place was barely maintained. A couple of rusty fire pits, a few rotting picnic tables, and 2 rundown outhouses. From what I'd heard, the park rangers only checked it maybe once a year. We pulled in and started setting up camp. My buddy wandered over to the outhouses. He opened the door to the first one, stood there for a few seconds, then shut it without a word. He went to the second one instead, used it, and came back. That's when he told me, "You should check out the first one." I figured maybe someone had trashed it, or maybe an animal had gotten stuck inside and died. But when I opened the door, I froze in cold shock. Inside were 3 massive backpacks. And I mean big packs, the kind you'd use for week-long treks into the backcountry. Of course, we were nosy. We unzipped them. The first 2 were stuffed with good quality camping gear. Perfectly normal. But the third? It was filled to the brim with Skittles. Bulk bags, regular bags, sour, tropical. Every size and flavor imaginable. An entire pack dedicated only to Skittles. 3 backpacks, 2 with gear, and 1 with nothing but candy. We shut that outhouse door and didn't talk much about it after. But to this day, it's one of the strangest, most unsettling things I've ever stumbled across in the woods. The clown in the toilet. I was camping at a developed site in Idaho that was pretty remote. All day and all night, I hadn't seen a single other person around. It felt like I had the whole place to myself. The next morning, I went to use the pit toilet. That's when I saw it. In the corner of the stall was a clown doll, old, dirty, and just sitting there. I froze. There was no way I had missed that the day before. I'd been there all day, sitting at camp, walking back and forth, even using that same toilet. The corner had been empty, I'm sure, which meant someone had put it there overnight. When I stepped back outside the toilet, in the soft dirt by the door, were fresh footprints, large, barefoot. They seemed to be everywhere the more I looked around the area. I didn't waste time investigating anymore. I left quickly and never returned there again. The man with the bags. I was camping alone in a valley with no cell service. I'd stayed late on a trail, and as it got dark, I ran into a local guy. He was friendly and showed me a tucked-away camping spot, close to the river and the road, but camouflaged from view. That night, I made a fire, cracked a beer, and blasted a comedy podcast from my truck. I was loud, lit up, and not exactly being discreet. Since it was already late, I decided against setting up my tent. Instead, I slept in the back of my truck under the topper, surrounded by all my gear. The next morning, I got the fire going again, cracked another beer, and started making breakfast. That's when I noticed him. A man stood at the edge of my camp. He crept closer, but never looked directly at me. His clothes were filthy, and he had a long, matted beard. What really stood out were the plastic grocery bags. Dozens, maybe 25, tied all over his clothes, fluttering as he moved. I tried to break the ice. "Nice day, huh?" No response. I offered him food. Nothing. He just paced slowly around the perimeter of my camp, circling. I even offered him a beer. Still nothing. He kept turning his back, wandering in strange, slow patterns, like he wasn't really there with me. That's when the dread set in. Something about him felt wrong, dangerous. I made sure my bear spray and buck knife were within arm's reach. Finally, I snapped. You're either going to acknowledge me or you're leaving." Now he ignored me. I stood, grabbed the bear spray, and took a few steps toward him. He sulked away without a word, disappearing back into the trees. I didn't waste a second. I threw everything into my truck, slammed the toppers shut, and got out of there. The whole drive back, I couldn't stop thinking. Was he out there last night, watching me while I slept? And honestly, I'm thankful for my laziness. Because if I'd set up my tent instead of sleeping in my truck, who knows what might have happened. Cascade Camping, 1988. In 1988, when I was 10, my family went camping in the Cascades of Oregon. It was my birthday weekend. With us was my best friend and our golden retriever, Amber. Halfway up the trail to the camping spot, Amber froze, hackles raised, growling at something in the trees. My dad, ex-Army always carrying a sidearm, he searched around, but found nothing. We moved on. We made it to the camping spot without anything else happening after that. At the lake not too far from our tents, my friend, my dog, and I were exploring when a man stepped out of the woods. Tall, clean-cut with a white polo on, like he had just come from church. Amber barked furiously. He only stood there, smiling. The kind of smile that felt so creepy. He then took off walking at a fast pace, without saying anything. I told my parents, and my dad looked around for a long while, but he didn't see anyone. That night, while my parents were by the lake, we heard footsteps behind our tent, heavy breathing, grunting. Amber barked until it retreated, but we didn't see what it was. I told my dad again, and it seemed at first he thought we were messing with him. The next day, we all went down to the lake for a few hours, and when we got back to camp, our tents were unzipped, sleeping bags dragged out. Things had been tossed around a bit, not an animal. Someone had been there, it seemed. We broke camp immediately and went home. It was the weirdest thing I have ever experienced in my life. The Boy Scout happening. Back when I was in the Boy Scouts, I was working on my Wilderness Survival Merit badge. Part of the requirement was to build your own makeshift shelter and spend the night a couple miles away from the main campsite. There were about 8 of us boys, and once we had our shelters built, the adult leader left us out there to prove we could handle it. I was already an anxious kid, and the days leading up to this had me on edge. Still, I got through setting up my shelter and settled in for the night. Then, halfway through the night, I heard it. From the other shelter, a boy's voice screamed out, "No! Please, get away! Stop, don't!" And then, silence. My blood ran cold. I whisper shouted, "Hey! You okay?" But there was no response, no movement. What unsettled me most was that nobody else stirred. Not a single other kid woke up. It was like I was the only one who had heard it. Eventually, I realized he had been sleep-talking, having a nightmare. But in that moment, lying alone in my flimsy shelter, convinced something or someone was attacking him, I was sure we were about to be murdered. Even now, years later, I still can't believe I was the only one awake to hear it. The Ritual Walk. When I was around 14 or 15, my family used to camp at a state park. Every night, my friend and I had a tradition. We called it the Ritual. We'd leave the campground after dark and wander deep into the woods. Most nights, we'd bring flashlights, but keep them turned off, trying to challenge ourselves to move through the darkness. On this particular night, we decided to go farther than usual. By the time we realized how far we'd gone, we were nearly half a mile from the nearest campsite. That's when we heard it. a faint whisper behind us. We froze, then snapped on our flashlights and spun around. Nothing. Just trees and shadows. We laughed it off, kept walking. A few minutes later, the whisper came again, closer this time. We stopped, scanning the woods with our lights. Still nothing. A chill ran through me, and we decided it was probably best to head back, and that's when we saw her. A woman, crawling on the ground, whispering nonsense. Random words that made no sense. Her clothes were dark, torn, and caked with dirt. At first, she didn't notice us, but when she realized we were watching, she stood up. In the beam of our flashlights, she muttered, "I'm looking for my campsite." We were rattled, but we walked her back toward the campground. Eventually, we found her group. That's when we learned the truth. She wasn't a ghost or some lost creature in the woods. She was just extremely drunk, maybe high, and had gotten disoriented while trying to find the bathroom. Her friends hadn't even noticed she was missing. If we hadn't gone so deep into the woods that night, she might have been out there until morning. Even knowing what really happened, the image of her crawling in the dirt, whispering in the darkness, still gives me chills. The sniffer in the night. I went on a group camping trip deep in the middle of nowhere in Arizona. In the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of something sniffing right outside our tent. At first, I figured it had to be a bear, or at least some animal that caught the scent of our food. My first thought was, great, my dumbass friends probably forgot to tie up the garbage. But then I heard the sniffing move, slowly, from our tent to the tent next to us. Everyone inside my tent grabbed one another, silently confirming we were all awake and hearing the same thing. None of us dared to speak. Then, suddenly, a friend from another tent unzipped his flap and burst out, yelling and making as much noise as he could. He even had a gun with him, hoping the noise alone would scare off whatever animal was creeping around our site. But it wasn't an animal. It was a man. Some random guy had wandered into our campsite, gone through our coolers, and was literally sniffing our tents. Our friend chased him off into the darkness, but none of us felt safe after that. We packed up our gear right then and there and got the hell out. Even now, remembering the sound of that sniffing still makes my skin crawl. Baby handprint. My name is Luca. This is a camping trip that actually happened. I was only 10 years old on a school camping trip. There were a few of us in the cabin that night, just kids goofing around. We thought it would be funny to talk to ghosts, so we took turns saying random, silly things into the dark. There was an empty bed in the cabin. Nobody was using it. After a night of ghost talk with no response, we glanced over and froze. On the mattress was the clear imprint of a child lying down. We were stunned. My friend Steven panicked and ran into the bathroom, locking the door behind him. Moments later, he started yelling that something had touched his leg. We tried to get in the bathroom, but the door wouldn't open. Then, out of nowhere, the lock fell onto the floor by itself. The doorknob shook violently, like it was about to break off. That's when we noticed something even worse. The curtain was moving even though the windows were shut tight. On the mirror was the faint imprint of a tiny baby's hand, far too small to belong to any of us. None of us had seen it earlier. By then, we were terrified. None of us could sleep. To make it worse, I started feeling burning hot and sick, along with another kid in the cabin, while the rest of them said they were freezing cold. We tried to tell the camp leaders about it and move us out of that cabin, but they all laughed it off. No one believed anything we said. I'll never forget that night. I wanted to believe we were just imagining it all. But deep down, I knew something was really there with us that night. The Bankhead Stranger. I camp once a month in the same spot in Bankhead, a little rock outcropping by a creek about half a mile from where I park my truck. 2 summers ago, I'd just set up my hammock and started gathering wood when a man appeared. Mid-40s, jeans, old sneakers. He started asking me about the area, good places to camp, if there were fish in the creek, that kind of thing. It wasn't unusual for someone to wander down there once in a while. But the way he strolled in, like I'd invited him, felt wrong. Something about him just seemed off. Eventually, he walked away, but the unease stuck with me. I trusted my gut. Across the creek, high up a cliff, there's a rock shelter that overlooks my camp. Hard to get to, but a perfect vantage point. I took some of my gear, left the hammock where it was, and stayed quiet looking on to my campsite. No fire, just waiting. Around midnight, in the moonlight, I saw a figure. A man, moving toward my hammock. My heart was pounding as I watched him unzip it, poke around my camp, rummage through my stuff, then wander off toward the main trail. I couldn't tell if it was the same guy. I didn't see a weapon. But the thought of what might have happened if I'd been asleep in that hammock made me feel sick to my stomach. I waited, then slipped out along an alternate trail, moving silent, every sense on edge. I never saw him again. I made it to my truck, drove a few miles down the road, and spent the night locked inside the cab. I came back in the morning, grabbed my gear, and I left very quickly. 10th Anniversary Terror. About a year ago, my husband and I went camping for our 10th anniversary, bringing our dog Daisy along. The park was a huge forest, dotted with lakes and campsites. By late September, it was quiet, just a handful of people around. We picked a spot by a small lake. Across the water, another campsite was visible. We went for a little walk over to the other campsite, where a man about our age stood silently when we passed him. There didn't seem to be anyone else at this spot. He didn't respond when we greeted him, just stared. Odd, but we shrugged it off. That night, after dinner by the fire, Daisy suddenly went ballistic, barking into the woods. We thought maybe a bear or moose. My husband grabbed his headlamp and went to check. Just 10 meters from camp, he froze. It's a human, lying on the ground. It was the same man we passed on our hike earlier. He stood up slowly, told us to keep the dog away, then walked straight to our fire and sat down. He never explained why he'd been crawling around in the dark without a light. His one leg was soaked, like he'd stepped into the lake. A knife hung from his belt. Every few minutes, he fiddled with something in his pocket. Not a phone, I believe. He barely spoke, just stared at the flames. After about half an hour, he muttered something and left. The moment he disappeared, I told my husband there was no way I was sleeping in that tent. He agreed. As we packed, I caught a flash of light on the trail. The man was coming back. We jumped in the car and left immediately. I don't know what his intentions were, but the whole encounter left me certain. When you're camping, the scariest thing you can find at night isn't an animal. It's another person.
Greasy onion rings, midnight pizza delivery, extra spicy curry. Oh, you made the choice, and now you're paying the price. Dr. Doom Room toilet paper is here. Wipe out the doom.